Money doesn't just come from one place. It drips, trickles, flows, and floods into our lives in different ways. Welcome to Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, a podcast that explores the power of multiple income streams. We've got merch. That's right. Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood t-shirts are officially here, and they're as comfy as they are conversation starting. Grab yours at the link in our show notes. All right, everybody. We are so excited to have Dave Coverly here with us today. He's the creator of the cartoon panel Speed Bump, which runs internationally in hundreds of newspapers and websites. Very, very awesome. I'm super excited to learn more about this. Also adorable because I'm looking at your adorable dog here, Macy. I'm like looking at your website and your cute dog and getting distracted me. We also need to know about your dog. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, Macy was, she was the best dog ever. I mean, she's not with us anymore, but it's been a little while. But that promo photo, I was so pleased with it just because her head cocked at the right time, and she's the kind of dog that would do anything you asked her to do. Like she was, she'd probably make you coffee if you would train her to do that. So she was a great dog.
We're sorry for your loss. She is adorable, and I love that you kept the photo there. Everybody can go and see Macy on the website.
It's a nice way for me to sort of keep her around too. Like I like seeing it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining, Dave. I'm excited to have you on the show. How this came about is I saw Speed Bump in Ducktown Weekly, and I've been reading it for, I don't know, a little over a year. We actually had Eric, the creator of Ducktown Weekly, on at one point, and your comic is just hysterical. It is so, laugh out loud. Even just, the individual comics are, but even just like the drawing of the speed bump on the tightrope is just such a funny concept that, I don't know. I just love it. So how did you, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you, where are you at? How did you get into doing Speed Bump?
Yeah, it's funny. Like all cartoonists, I feel like we all drew as little kids, it's just kind of a continuation of being a 5-year-old. So, for better or for worse, sometimes I think like, man, I could have, I'm still doing what I love doing when I was 5, but I think what happens, and I've told this to, especially to students, is that when you're a little kid and you're drawing something and you actually draw something that looks kind of like something, you're so excited, right? Like you draw an elephant, it kind of looks like an elephant. You're like, oh my God, I drew an elephant. And then you get to be sort of that preteen teenager stage, and you draw an elephant and you're like, God, that sucks. That doesn't look like an elephant at all. Like, I'm so bad at drawing. And so you stop. And I was one of those kids that didn't really have that sort of in my head that my drawings were bad. And I think part of that wasn't because they were good at all. I was no more talented than anybody else that drew cartoons back in that time. Like I had friends, we'd get together and draw cartoons, and they were better than me. I just loved doing it so much that I kept doing it. But the most important part of all that was that I had teachers and parents who completely encouraged it. Like I never heard somebody say like, well, that's a bad choice. And so all the way through, like that's the reason I do it professionally, is because there came a step where a high school teacher said like, oh no, I think you should keep doing this. And I was doing it for the high school paper, whatever, so there's all these small steps along the way that add up to like this path. And so he would bring in the New Yorker magazine, and that just blew my mind. That was those, like when people ask what the influences are, to me, it's like the New Yorker cartoons, just because they're so subtle and dry, or at least back then. Like things change, but back then when I was reading them, like I didn't understand 90% of them. I had no idea what was going on, but I knew they were about something, and I really wanted to do that kind of humor because it appealed to me. I like cartoons that are subtle, that you read it and there's like a beat. You take a second, and you're like, what's going on? And then you go, oh, then you get it. Like I don't prefer humor that's like immediate. I do like it to be a little bit more thoughtful if possible. I mean, I draw plenty of dogs peeing and dog butt jokes to break up the monotony of the subtle cartoons, but that's just kind of what I always like doing. So, I apologize. So when I started doing cartoons, I just naturally gravitated to what I enjoyed reading. And I think that's what I think that's what every creative person does, don't they? Really, it's just that you enjoy something or you admire something, and you maybe have a little spark in you that wants to also be like that and do something like that. And so you just start copying in a way, like not copying directly, not plagiarizing, but thinking like, oh, I want to be like that. I want to do that. And so when I talk to other kids who want to be cartoonists, I make sure that I make sure that they know that you don't want to be a cartoonist or an artist or any kind of creative just so you can say you are because you think it's cool. Like you have to love the process. You have to enjoy doing it because there's so many times where it's really, really hard. Um, Coming up with I do 7 ideas a week. Like they don't all come easy. I'll tell you, it's like maybe 2 of them come easy and 5 of them you're like, oh my God, you finally come up with something. Um, but I like kids to know that, this is something that you do because you love doing it. And I'm very lucky because I still love doing it. Speed Bump has been in syndication since 94. So it was like 32 years if my math is right. And, uh, I love it. I probably love it more now than even when I started. So
So did you do other things, or did you just say, I'm going to be a cartoonist, and you just went for it and were able to make it work out?
yeah, that's part of the small steps, right? So I did the cartoons and got good enough to sort of start saying my stuff out. So that's what happens is that you get to the point where, okay, like I know how to draw cartoons, but I have no idea like what the logistics are of becoming a cartoonist. And that's where other cartoonists come in. And that's where the whole pay it forward aspect of this comes in. With anything creative, anything freelance is like, there's so much worth in connecting with other people who do it because especially older that they've done it and they can tell you things that like you literally just no possible way you would have known. And then they can introduce you to other people that may be in a position where they can help you get a foothold. And so maybe somebody says, oh, well, we'll put you once a week in our small town paper. And so, like seeing yourself in print, no matter how small it is, it's like crack. You just like see it in the paper and you're like, oh my God, I drew that and then now it's in the paper and like you see somebody reading it and not laughing and you're like, I don't care. At least it's in the paper. And so that you get that feeling in yourself, like, I want to keep doing that. And so then the next step is just trying to get bigger and bigger. For me, in particular, the most important thing was to become syndicated. And a syndicate is basically acts as an agent. And that's how you get in the Ducktown Weekly. Because the papers around the country, they don't use cartoons from just freelance people individually. They almost exclusively go through syndicates. Because it's a business model and because they can trust like one big entity to get them the content instead of asking like 36 different cartoonists to get them the content. That's just if you've met any cartoonists, that's like a recipe for disaster because with cartoonists, it's like herding squirrels, like we don't have any idea what's going on half the time in our own lives. So, trusting us is never a good idea.
So so how does that work? So you got on with, is there multiple syndications you could get on with, or do you like sign a contract, you're with one, and then do you have a set fee they pay you for being with them, or is it based off of like the distribution of Speed Bump?
Exactly, the latter, yes. So there used to be like just 4 or 5 big syndicates, and so they would be like an umbrella. They would have a bunch of cartoonists and a bunch of like advice columnists like Ann Landers or whatever. And so anything you would see in the paper would kind of come from a syndicate, more or less. And so what you do is you send out your cartoons to all the syndicates, and then you hope that they need one. The problem with that back in the day was that they would probably get 30 to 40,000 submissions a year, and they would syndicate 2 or 3. So it was like playing the lottery. So like telling my parents that, yeah, I want to be a cartoonist. I want to be a syndicated cartoonist because that's the only way to get in the paper. I'm gonna throw all my eggs in that basket. Is like, oh, that is dumb. That is really dumb. So I would do other things while I was trying to do that. And so it took me about 8 to 10 years to become syndicated. I didn't get syndicated until I was 30. And so those 8 years, I was doing other things, but all the while I'm like sending things into the syndicate every 6 months and I'm getting rejection letters. And I actually wallpapered my wall above my drawing table with the rejection letters, just as like an incentive, like it just like, nope, You're not going to say no to me every single time.
I love
So
that. So where,
perseverance.
yeah. So where does that perseverance come from? And what were you doing in the meantime? We did a episode, oh, I don't know, it's been maybe a couple months ago now, where we kind of talked about fast money, fun, slow dreams, and not necessarily fast money in the fact that you're making a big windfall of money, but fast money in like you get a weekly paycheck that comes every week while you're trying to fund these dreams. And what did that part of your life look like? And then, yeah, where'd the perseverance come from that you said that you hung those that you hung those letters up on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I did a lot of freelance illustration in the meantime. I was going to graduate school too. I went back to graduate school to get my master's in creative writing. Like so the plan B was sort of to teach writing, and not to digress on a tangent, but cartooning is like 90% writing. We have a saying that a good idea can save a bad drawing, but a good drawing can't save a bad idea, and it all starts from the idea. And so that was my background was writing more than anything. And so I was doing freelance illustration, like whatever came along. And it's another thing I always tell kids is like, I wasn't too good for anything. Like whatever came along. There's an educational magazine that paid me $5 a drawing, and so, yeah, I'd be up all night doing 200 drawings or whatever, and, cause they were just small, but I didn't make a lot of money doing that. But the benefit that was built into that was that I got a lot better at drawing because I was drawing so much. And so there's always like a hidden benefit to anything you do as long as you're proactive about it. I think, again, I think it was like Picasso said, inspiration will find you, but it must find you working. And there is that sort of idea, like you can always be doing something. So some things made some money, some things didn't make a ton of money. And so on the side, I'm just drawing this single panel cartoons and submitting them over and over. And I was a political cartoonist for about 6 years, down in Bloomington, Indiana. So that wasn't a ton of money, but it was also the same thing, honing your skills. So there's just a lot to be said for just like working on your craft as much as possible, even if it's not paying all the bills at that moment. It is a long game, and the perseverance came from two different places, which is I love doing it so much that I just was sort of insistent on the universe that this happened. But also I was like really kind of bad at everything else. Like I kind of don't really have any other skills whatsoever. So I had a feeling like if this doesn't work out for me, I don't know what I'd be doing. I don't even want to guess what I'd be doing. So I'm very lucky that it worked out and I don't have to worry about that. But so once I got syndicated, then it was kind of like, not really off the races, but yeah, you get picked up. Creator Syndicate picked me up. And then this is the thing I always tell kids too, is like, there's a lot of luck involved in every career. It doesn't, you can't bank on it, but there's so much luck in hindsight. Everybody has moments they can look back at and be like, oh man, like if that hadn't happened, then this wouldn't happen, et cetera. You don't plan on it. You can't even make it happen. But, so I got syndicated in 94 and like in the spring, I was probably in like 8 papers, this is really hard to launch a new thing because you got to kick out an old thing. And also it just wasn't very good. Like I had like 26 good cartoons that I'd given the syndicate and that talked him into syndicating me. And then once 26 days were over, I'm like, I gotta do it all over again for 32 years. But that fall, Gary Larson retired The Far Side. And so suddenly newspapers all over the world had like a square place on their comics page that needed filling. And you could fill that with a comic strip. But if you did that, you'd have to repaginate the entire thing, like a puzzle. Way easier for editors just to buy a different panel, stick it in there. So a number of us single panel cartoonists who were sort of mucking around, picked up, I went from like 8 papers to 120 papers, like in 2 weeks or something. Just because I was just, but I don't even take credit for it. Honestly, it's like, I was there. I happened to be there at the right time. The syndicate picked me up because they had a single panel that they were unable to sell very well. We're just looking for one. And I had just won some small town contest and the prize was not money. It was just a special showing to the syndicates. So that's like, there's all these lucky steps and going backward. They're like, man, this easily could not have happened.
You keep saying luck, but it's also right. Luck is when hard work meets opportunity. You obviously were working hard and had positioned yourself to to be in a spot to capitalize on, you know, the Far Side going away. I mean, probably
Right.
weren't going to bump them. So, but doing that work and being in a position. You've referenced a few times when you're talking to kids. Do you have is that something that is a part of your world where you are talking to kids regularly about being a cartoonist or whatever else they're going to be doing in their world?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say regularly, but I've done it often. Like when I'm asked, I enjoy talking to them, talking to classes or whatever. Especially like really little kids, it's a little trickier. Just because the kind of humor I do, it's hard to like they don't understand it. So they like that I'm a cartoonist, but all they want me to do is draw Garfield. Um, so I learned to draw Garfield, pretend like I'm Jim Davis. But there's that briny area of ages where it's like 8 to 12 that I really like talking to because kids are starting to get a sense of themselves, and then you can tell which kids actually are pretty interested in doing it. They're not just messing around. And so then I feel like I have things I can say to them. So sometimes it's classes. It's I can't. There's not a lot of us who do this for a living. There's not like a million cartoonists out there. For a number of reasons, some financial, and so many times I'll like have a friend or a friend of a friend and their kid loves cartoons or wants to be cartoonists. And so, can they talk to you or can you talk to them or whatever? And I'm always happy to do that because I always loved when that happened to me. I remember when I was like a really little kid, I was probably like 6 years old. One of my earliest memories of art. And it was my, my sister's teacher's father, like just this random thing, but he was the artist that would do, remember those plastic toy models that you buy all the parts and you put it together. He did like the realistic art for the boxes. So he had a studio in his basement, and it showed that he had all his art out there and all as a kid, you're like, how can anybody draw like this? Like, how is this even possible? So it was like magic. And I remember just seeing his studio, and just thinking, this has got to be the coolest place on earth. Like, just you get to just draw, and you have all this space is all just for you just to draw, and like all your drawings are everywhere, and people are giving you money to do that. I'm like, that is cool. So it wasn't like that was the moment where I went, I'm never not doing that. But there's a reason it's a really sort of visceral memory for me, just what it felt like. So I think I always kind of wanted to do something like that.
It reminds me of that saying, like, you can't be what you can't see. And I think that's cool that you were able to, obviously, you're seeing cartoons out in the world, but you were able to actually see a person who is drawing and making a living. And then maybe that wasn't the exact moment that you said you would be a cartoonist, but that stuck with you. And I think that's very cool. And then the fact that now you're able to pass along that knowledge to kids is pretty awesome.
Yeah, so that's a great saying too, because yeah, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so it's like, but I do remember thinking like, how do people make a living? Like, how do you even get to the point where like, what are the logistics of any of this? You know what I mean? Like, how does anybody even find you? Because that's another thing I tell, especially older kids, is like, it's really tempting to just sit around and draw a lot. Go in your room, draw, whatever. But if you don't put yourself out there, no one's gonna come knocking on your door. Like no one's looking for you. You have to put it out there, and that takes some courage, honestly. Like is one of the things I learned early on is after I was syndicated, when these were going like around the world, um, I said you gotta have a thick skin because people aren't always super nice, and it can be over a silly thing. Like they can get really, really angry over silly things, or just very judgmental. And if you're in the public eye, they can't wait to like correct you if you do. So like one time I mixed up a lectern and a podium. I got the term wrong in the cartoon. I had like 44 emails telling me like, what, you're such a moron. You don't know the difference between a lectern and a podium. I'm like, no, I admit it. Like I didn't know. Now I know, but I did it right in front of everybody. And I'm like, there are worse mistakes to make, but so it's just one of those things you have to understand going into it, that if something you do is in public. And I appreciate, like, I'm not really a total introvert, but I'm sort of an extrovert introvert kind of person. I spend a lot of time alone and I enjoy it. So I appreciate sort of doing humor with the buffer between me and the audience. Like if I see somebody reading the comics page, I don't want to watch them read the comics page. I could never do stand-up comedy, that kind of thing. It's just people's instant reactions to it. I can just sit here in my studio and pretend like everybody's laughing hilariously at every single cartoon I've ever drawn. And just,
Until you get those weird emails. And then you have to say, I've been on the receiving end. I'm a writer as well. I'm a writer and have been on the receiving end of very many bizarre emails. So I completely understand.
Oh, it's too bad. I mean, it's funny is that people like, they assume they can just do that. I don't really understand the mindset.
Same. I just think like they must have something going on in their life and it has nothing to do with us, right? Because really, like, how are we offending them with your drawing or my writing? So obviously they're in a place where they're not feeling very happy and they're just projecting outwards. So, and it just happens to project vomit all over us in that moment. But, I'm sure we're not the only ones. But I think that's interesting because you brought up two things now, which, one is having thick skin. The other one is being able to handle rejection. And those are two big, big, big things, right? I get asked a similar question all the time, like, how do you handle that? Or how do you deal with that? Like, how do you keep going in the face of that? I mean, I certainly have like my answer for it, but I'd love to know yours. Like, there has to be something that keeps you going in the face of those emails that you're getting, rejections that you're getting, all of those things. I would love to know, like, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, no, I'd like to hear yours too. For me, it's actually gotten easier as I've gotten older. I think early on, I would take them a little more personally, and I would sometimes reply when I shouldn't have replied. I mean, I think I was within my rights to reply, but also just, in hindsight, it's not worth it. Like, you end up in like going, 3 or 4 emails later, you're like, oh my God, I just lost like 3 hours of my life I'll never get back with this person. So there's that. You learn. And also I've learned that, like, when I get a mean one, I have a rule. I take 24 hours and decide if I'm going to reply to it. And then if I do decide to reply, I can't tell you how many times I've done that. I replied diplomatically, like very politely, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, etc. And I think 90% of the time I got a reply to those that said, I'm really sorry. Like, to your point, so I was having a bad day and took it out on you. It's like they're having a good day. They wouldn't have done that. And so it reminded me that just like a little bit of kindness, it's good, because then it's like, you don't know people, like, you don't know what kind of day they're having. You don't know if the cashier's rude to you. You don't know if her cat just died or something. Like, you just don't know. So, it's always not just nicer, but it's almost like even easier just to be nice, and then see how that goes. But also as I've gotten older, I think just perspective wise, I'm confident in my work. Like, I've gotten to the point where, like, I know what I do. I know what I do well. I know what I don't do well. I know who I am at this point. And so if somebody doesn't like it, like, it doesn't bother me at all. It just, it's just like, that's fine, because I really enjoy doing this, and I can't make everyone happy. Humor is super subjective. Like, I understand that. So I think if I draw one today you didn't like, you might like tomorrow's, or vice versa with somebody else. Like, that's just my attitude toward it. So it's fine. I remember when I first started doing this, when I first got syndicated, right before I got syndicated, I reached out to a professional cartoonist I admired, a guy named Mike Peters. He does Mother Goose and Grimm, and he did political cartoons. Super, super nice guy. And I sent him my cartoons, and he called me, and he said, one thing I got to tell you is, like, when you start doing this, just do it to make yourself laugh. Don't try and make anyone else laugh, because you can't. You just, if you do it so that you like it. At the end of the day, you have to like your own work. And then you just hope that there are enough people in the world kind of like you, who kind of have your sense of humor, that agree that these are kind of funny. So I don't beat myself up when I don't have like my best cartoon of the day. And some of them I just think like, yeah, that's a competent idea. That's, I can't hit it out of the park 7 days a week. So I just tend to be more professional about it, and just think, because it's a job. And you can't, like, I'm not allowed to have, I'm not allowed to have a block. Like, I can't have a week where I'm just like, yeah, I got nothing. That's what you do when you're a pro, is like, you come up with something, and sometimes you kill it and sometimes you don't. And then you turn them in. I mean, also because I do so many, that there's a little bit of factory, feel to it. So you're kind of like flipping them out, and you don't have, the beauty of deadlines is like, I don't have time to fuss over it. Cause I know with art, art can be fussed over forever. You can do a painting and then like never leave it alone. Um, I don't have the luxury of fussing over anything, but that's great because I don't beat myself up because I don't have time to fuss. So this is the best I could do in this 2 hour stretch. Here you go. I'm going to start all over again tomorrow. And then that's just is what it is. And you just get used to it, I guess. It's just like with anything creative, it doesn't feel so new and tricky anymore. Just like I know what kind of cartoons I draw and I know what I'm after. Because when you first, like, I think this is true with anybody creative too. When you first start out, you have all these influences and you have all these things you really like, and you're picturing those things instead of your own thing because you haven't actually created your own thing yet. And so there's like that period at the beginning where you're like you can picture somebody else's cartoon and you get an idea, it's not theirs, but you're picturing their drawing or whatever, or their style. So then you're trying to draw it in your own style, but you're figuring out your own style. You don't know it yet. And there's a moment that you don't even know when the moment happens that you realize, when you're thinking of cartoon ideas, you're thinking of your own drawing style. And that's sort of when the magic happens. Cause that's when you're like, okay, this is a thing I've created. This is a thing I do, not in the small scale, but in the arc. Like this, now I understand like who I am and what I'm after. And that's when my work got better. I mean, to me, like, at least I like it better because I see it and I see it in my own, I see in my brain, I see my own drawings, which is like, it's a weird thing when you don't, but there's no way to know your own style until you make your own style. So it's like the only way to get there is to go through it. And I think that kids have a hard time with that too. Like just wanting to happen like immediately and wanting to be like really good immediately. And that's understandable. It's frustrating.
Do you think that's generational? Because I feel like I don't know if that's a product of like social media or AI or like all of the things going on now. Everything is so immediate, right? Whereas we were growing up, I don't know, you are Gen X, like obviously we're still using like dictionaries and encyclopedias and everything. Microfiche, all of the things. It took a lot longer to get things done. And so there wasn't an immediacy to it, and particularly not to anything creative. And nowadays, it feels like, somebody is like looking to go viral online, let's say, right? So for like that quick hit of fame, and thinking that's the path versus the path that you're talking about, the path that I've gone as well, which is that like really long runway of building on something and growing and marinating. And again, there's ups and downs. This isn't like a path that just keeps going up. A creative career is more like a roller coaster. So what do you think about that? What do you think is about that nowadays where people think there's maybe a quick win or a fast path? Whereas I don't think that was necessarily the thought back in our days.
Yeah. Back in the old days when we were making our own candles, and drawing by the light of our candles, I think you're really definitely onto something because it is the attention span is 100% different now. And so I'd always sort of considered the attention span from a perspective of like people who are reading things that are creative, but I hadn't really thought about that with the attention span of people who are creating it, trying to get the follows and the likes and the hits and stuff. I think it's much easier to get caught up in sort of the followers and the likes, because that's instantaneous. Like, if the cartoon worked or not, because you got like 100,000 likes or you got 1,000 or 10 or whatever. The problem is, and the differences between like that and when we started doing it is that there's no growth that like sort of equals a path that leads to something more permanent. Like that's a really exciting time for that one image that you put up. You're like, oh, look at all the people like this, it's going crazy. But then you got to do another one. You got to do another one. You got to do another one. Like you can't make a living just getting a bunch of likes on it. Like it has to lead to something. And I know, I've been telling people too, like I'm 62. I'm kind of glad I'm not 32 because I think it looks hard up there. Like, and maybe if I was 32, my brain would adjust and I'd figure out my own path within this way it is now. But I look at it and I'm like, oh my God, it's just like anybody can do anything and put it out there. And so in some ways it's democratic because, if something gets a lot of likes, a lot of people liked it. On the other hand, breaking through all the noise, it just gives me hives thinking about it. And I don't necessarily think that quality is always rewarded. I mean, I think there's algorithms that reward it. I think there's like influencers who just say the word and then somebody's piece of artwork goes crazy. Um, and that's just the way it is. Like, I'm not even complaining about it, but I don't know that I would be very good at it. So I feel kind of happy that I'm older. Um, but I also think like I don't know if it's just a business model thing. Because I think that's the biggest, obstacle, I think, to making a living is sort of this business model of, not having a place where like you just put your things out there and then people enjoy them or don't enjoy them. Like there's just so much work to find things now. So I know a lot of cartoonists, what they do is like they use that exposure because I mean, cartoonists and artists, one thing we joke about is like people die of exposure. Like you don't get paid for exposure. And so what I've found that they've been doing is that they use that exposure to sell merchandise. And so that seems like the business model now that was not a thing. Like I never thought about merchandise in my life, back in the day. And then, then somebody comes along and says, oh, we want to put these on t-shirts or whatever. And like, all right, good luck to you. Cause I've seen that. That doesn't go anywhere. So I just think I think to your point, it's like, I think everybody's navigating, but in really small, quick ways. And it's almost like a daily sort of grind to sort of figure out, okay, what is changing in social media now? Cause it's one thing to hop on the syndicate and they do their job and you just draw your cartoons and everybody's like doing their thing. But on social media, it's like, that's changing all the time. Like how it works is changing all the time. The tech is changing all the time. And then whoever is in charge of it gets to decide like what gets through. And then, so there's always end around things or like, oh no, you should upload on Tuesday at 3 PM because that's the best time or whatever. I'm like, oh my God, just, it would, if I had to like live my life doing that, I don't know that I would enjoy this job as much. I mean, when I first started drawing, I reached out to one of my heroes, a cartoonist named Jim Unger. It was Canadian. He did a cartoon panel called Herman, and just wrote him and just like, oh, I'm a big fan, and I just wanted to like let you know that I love your stuff, and this is what my stuff looks like, and can I have a quote for my new book? And the piece of advice he gave me was that to this end is that he's like, don't get caught up in all the outside stuff. Like, make sure when you're working, you sit down and you really work on your craft and you make your cartoons as good as they can be, as good as you want them to be. And don't get caught up in all like the sales stuff and marketing stuff and like, or who else is doing well and you're not, that kind of thing. Cause it's extremely distracting. And then, and then if there's one thing that'll get in the way of creativity is grievance. If you're sitting around like jealous or annoyed or whatever, it's not just anything creative, but especially humor. It's hard to be funny when you're like all pissed off that someone else is like doing better than you are. Like that's the opposite of funny.
It's interesting to hear both of you, talk about the rejection and the feedback. And I've only been I've only been a published writer for about 6.5 years. And within, and COVID really kind of propelled that forward. And I had an experience very early on where I pissed off an island of people. I do a lot of like outdoor type writing, and I wrote about going out to this island, and these were all the different things you could do outside on this island. You could go to this beach, you could do this. And there was like this big uproar on the island of, oh my gosh, you're going to kill us all because you're sending everybody out here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just started writing. All I want to do is come up with some activity people could do outside. And fortunately, this publication was only online. And my editor was super kind. And she goes, we're not going to take it down. We'll just put a disclaimer at the top of please follow all the COVID protocols and whatever. I'm like, well, this was short-lived, and they were all in next door neighbor bashing me. And then fortunately a couple people stood up for me and, they understood that It was all outside stuff and everything.
That's
It's
crazy though.
interesting, that because I think I didn't grow up as a creative in what I would call a very typical way. I always thought work was building something, making something, producing something, and that was the world that I grew up in. And so it's when you say talk to other creatives, I think that that's a empowering thing. It's very recently that I've started collaborating with other creatives doing things, and um, so it's cool that you sounds like almost from day one just were willing to just reach out to these other people that you looked up to and said,
Mm.
"Hey, this I think what you do is cool," and then
Right.
you learned that way. I mean, that's why I
Yeah, it's
reached
good.
out to you because I'm like, man, this guy just made me laugh my ass off. I let's
Great.
see if he wants to come on the podcast.
I
That's
think it
awesome.
might have been the way that you reached out though, Dave, because this was something that comes up a lot in conversations that I have is like lots of people want to reach out to folks who are a bump or several bumps ahead of them, right? But I think it's very much about the intent. If you're reaching out to them because you genuinely want to learn, you're like, I'm a fan. I find this fascinating. Love your work. I just want to hear like your story, right? And I sense that's
Mhm.
probably how you reached out, right? That's a whole different ball game than reaching out with the intent that that person's going to give you a job or an opportunity. And when I lived in LA and I'm still doing a lot of work there, that unfortunately is like 90% of networking as people go in with that intent of like, oh, I only want to have coffee with this person because maybe they'll introduce me to their manager or maybe they'll read my script and then pass it along for a producer. Instead of just being like, I love your work and I want to hear your story. And so I really think there's a delineation there that's important. And I imagine is probably the intent that you went in with it, which then made you successful in reaching out to these folks.
Yeah, I mean, I have the attitude that like everyone likes compliments. Like no matter who, you could run into like a celebrity or just a friend. And like I just try to remind myself, like just be complimentary, and not because I'm trying to get anything, just because like everybody likes a compliment. And also, as I've gotten older, I'm like, if I think that way, like if I think, oh, I really like this guy's work or this girl's work, and then why not tell? Like if I don't tell them that was then they never knew. Like somebody out in the world was admiring their work and didn't bother to tell them. So it almost feels like a responsibility if you really like something, just to let people know, because it's brightens their day, maybe just for an hour or something. But also when I would reach out to people, yeah, I didn't wait to your point is like I didn't say like what can this person do for me? Like um I would ask for maybe some advice, but it wouldn't be advice that would be like, oh, what are you going to do to help me? Just be like, well, what can you say to me that would like help me help myself? Like what would be just like something smart that you learned? Like, because the implication when you're asking people that is like that they are successful, and you're saying to somebody, I'm acknowledging that you're very successful at this. And so even the underlying message is nice, because you're saying, hey, you're killing it. How do I get where you are? Like what any secrets, or just being funny or fun about it is the easiest way to do it. But really, like most people are just nice if you give them a chance. And especially I've found in a field like this, where like writing or drawing or anything creative, is that most people understand how hard it is to start. I mean, most people have been there. Even Charles Schultz, before he did Peanuts, he was like doing strips that weren't selling or whatever. I mean, it wasn't like he just was born and then Charlie Brown came out of his pen fully formed or anything. So everybody's got a story, and you just have to sort of want to be. Uh, you have to want to connect with that person on a human level, and just know that you want to know their story. And and also, to be fair, people like talking about themselves if you give them a chance. And no one's so like, oh no, I don't want to talk about me. So if you ask people nice questions, yeah, I think you can. And I've ended up doing that, and then I've got tons of friends in the cartoonist world now, just because we clicked. It wasn't even like we needed anything from each other. We're peers or colleagues. And it's like, it's like with anything in any profession that there's also like things you understand about each other that like no one could possibly understand otherwise. And that's not like good or bad. It's just they've had the same experiences you've had that are somewhat unique. And so then, you can talk about that. And that's actually helpful too. Like just talking to somebody who's a peer, but is having an experience that's different than yours. That can be illuminating too. So I don't know. I just feel like, most of us work alone. Like there's not like these, office complexes full of cartoonists just like hacking it out and then like having lunch.
Maybe that's another revenue stream. So we have a cartoon co-working space.
Right.
So, you're for people that want to live a creative life, I feel like you're just giving a very nice path. Like you're really laying this out for people, the perseverance, the hard work, the stick-to-itiveness, I guess, kind of a thing. But then, the collaboration, just to talk to each other. And so it's great what you're saying. But the reality is like, you've got to do all those things and then you have to like be able to produce and you have to be able to monetize that. So, and Drip Trickle Flow Flood, it's all about income streams, but it's also about being able to live the life that you want to live, which you have designed this world. But talk a little bit about, on your website, you have books for sale. You obviously have the syndication. Looks like you've done picture books, greeting cards. Talk about kind of your world and how you have monetized your passion essentially. And then I'd also like to hear, how do you keep coming up with more ideas? Like, it's impressive.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So, business wise, the thing about a freelance career like this is like I got the tent pole of Speed Bump, and that's a daily thing. That's a regular check. But if most of us who are doing these, like that would be enough for me creatively for a while. But then you sort of get that itch, like there are other things you want to do, and because you're freelance, you can make time. You can work weird hours. You can work weekends. If it's really important to you, you can do that. Especially if you enjoy it. Like I hate counseling people to be like, oh, well, you should work on the weekends or whatever. Like I did that a lot for my children's books, but I was really having fun. Like it was like, oh, I could work on a children's book or I could go mow. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go work on my, much to the chagrin of my family. I got the mowing done, but the trick is sort of like, because you can make your own time, because you're like, that's the beauty of the freelance is like, you are in charge of your own time. The flip side of that is like, you can take on too much. And so you have to find that sort of balance. But doing the children's books and like that was just like another outlet. And also because the Speed Bump is like one size every single time. It's the same size square. And so I'm constrained. I'm coming up with a little world, different joke every day in a little world, but it still has to be in that box. So a book was a nice way to sort of spread out, see what, challenge myself a little bit and see if I could come up with like different layouts and different compositions, things like that. And also as a money stream. Because you never know with the book how it's going to do. So my rule of thumb was basically like, if I was willing to do it for the advance and not worry about the royalty, then I would do it. Because you can't get sucked into sort of like, this book has to do well or I'm in trouble, because you can't, that is so out of your control. A couple of the ones that I've done, we were really happy with. They didn't do great. Then one a little chapter books I did that I really put some time into, just little black and white drawings for like middle school kids. That one made that Scholastic catalog, when you go, you're a kid. That was like one of the highlights of my life, is my book being in that Scholastic catalog. Cause that was like when you're a kid and you get that and you like, your books come in and you're like, they're waiting for, oh man.
I loved circling that thing.
Oh my gosh. Great.
Just
as the best, the book fair, the Scholastic book fair.
Yeah. They're still doing those too.
Oh,
No, it's like, I always remember I remember those very well. So, So some of the books did well and some of the books didn't do great. And that was totally fine. The one big trick with cartoons really is that as far as making money is to not have to draw a new cartoon every time you want to make more money. So you want to find ways that the cartoon can make money for you in other avenues, other places. So like greeting cards are a great example because those are just my cartoons on the front of a greeting card, and then they either come up with something clever on the inside I don't write, or they just leave them blank because a lot of times people just buy greeting cards because the front is funny, and then they can write their own thing in there. And so that I'll tell you, it's really strange. The and counterintuitive, but during COVID, the greeting cards just took off. Like not just mine. I mean, like the greeting card industry did great because people were so separated and suddenly like, I mean, I have a line of greeting cards in the UK and they tripled their business like at that time. So that's been a great revenue stream. And the beauty of it is to do with the own thing. Like I just, I mean, I don't want them to hear that, but, they would think that was funny. They look at my cartoons and they decide like what might work for their audience or what, what would be, because it's really hard for me to know like who's going to buy greeting cards. And I think the demographic skews very female, and there's an age group I'm not sure.
How
Maybe they're
do I get the job reading cartoons for this company decides which one gets to go on the, because right now I read a lot and I don't get paid for it at all. If somebody wants
Right.
to read comics and decide which ones would be good on cards, I would love to apply for that.
That's funny. I wonder if it's one of those things like working in an ice cream shop though. Like, a year later, you're like, oh my God, if I taste one more bite of ice cream, I'm gonna
Yeah.
buy it.
You probably just have to open a gift store or something, right? And then then it's like up to you what you want to merchandise your store with.
You're always making me start new businesses. I don't want to do that.
No, we got to shut that down. It's too much. We're going to get in trouble.
And then you also sell just like you have a new book coming out or that just came out, right?
It comes out in October.
Oh, it comes out in October. Yeah. The collection of canine comics.
It is. It's called My Support Dog Ate My Comfort Food. And it's a collection of all my dog cartoons. About 10 years ago, I had a collection of my dog cartoons come out, and it did pretty well, actually, better than I expected. And then, but in the last 7, 8, 9 years, there's a guy named Ron Rath who does the coloring for my cartoons now, and he's just a genius. And so, over the years, I've had different people do the coloring, and so when you collect them, they look. There's not a consistency to it, and some are just much better than others, and some look like they're colored by monkeys on heroin. So it was hard to get a consistent look. And so this guy's been with me for a while, and he just does beautiful coloring. We work together, and he knows my palette now that I want and all that. And so it occurred to me that like these dog cartoons that I do 2 or 3 a week, would just look nice in a collection, not just because I want to have a book, but they would all look the same. And the book just looks gorgeous. Like whether you think they're funny or not is completely subjective, but they look really nice. And so Andrew McMeal, to their credit, or they may regret this, they agreed to publish it. And we put together picked the best of the last decade, basically, cartoons. And then because I'm a masochist, I decided that it wasn't enough just to have a book of cartoons collected that I'd already done. I could just slap together. I thought there's got to be something that runs through the book that's new. And so I had the idea of a doodle story. I don't know if you've ever seen Mad Magazine or the New Yorker, and they'll do like a little doodle somewhere tiny that you can barely see. And then you realize a couple pages later that there's another doodle, but it's continuation of the first doodle. And then actually, if you go through the whole magazine, it tells a little doodle story. I thought, I'll just do that. That'd be fun. Like have a dog chasing a squirrel through the book. And so that was the initial idea. And I thought that'd be cute. The more I got into it, the more I'm like, well, there's got to be a point to this. Like the dog's not just chasing the squirrel, because then it'd be boring. Like what? So they had to go. I decided they're going to go around the world, and so to show that, and then they have to draw like all these famous landmarks all over the world, and then to get from like one continent to another continent, they can't just be running. So in the end, it took me I probably spent every weekend last summer and fall just drawing this dog chasing a squirrel, like in a submarine and a blimp and an airplane, and just paddling a canoe or whatever. So it's just like a couple hundred drawings of this dog chasing this squirrel. So it ends up telling a story throughout the book, but it's real small, so it's nice. Like it doesn't get in the way of the cartoons. So they did it was really complicated logistically to put the book together. Trying to get that's one thing about creativity is that you got something in your brain and you're trying to put it into somebody else's brain. And if you don't articulate it just perfectly, then it's like they don't know. So there's a lot of back and forth. But anyway, the book, if people like dogs, it's a good, it might be a good gift. It's a good price point. It's not a huge book. It's just a nice polished book, I think.
We'll
Yeah.
make sure that we link to it as well in our show notes. It's coming out with Simon and Schuster, October. We have lots of dog fans, pet fans in general, but definitely
good.
dog fans. So including
Dog people are
us.
crazy.
Yeah, including us. We're dog fans for sure. I have a young one right now.
Oh, well,
And
Well, Dave,
before,
go ahead, Tony.
well, I know we're getting up against it, but before we end, I do want to just literally your comics make me just laugh out loud. And even though I'm reading essentially just a page of comics, that's all this publication is, with just a couple of little things. I'm always looking forward to whatever the speed bump comic is going to be on that page. And it really is. And so I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you. Just making people laugh. What a valuable thing to be putting out into the world. And I want to do a blog post about it. I haven't quite written it yet, but I've been formulating my mind about cartoonists being, like philosophers. Like, I feel like there are so many great lessons in the comic strips, and there's so much wisdom put in there. And but you're laughing while you're getting this, where if you pick up a philosophy book, you're probably asleep before you learn anything. So,
no, my major was philosophy. I
really?
not a lot of laughing. No.
Yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. We love talking to you. We're going to have you back because I feel like we could ask you a million bajillion questions.
That's great.
But thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this episode of Drip, Trickle, Flow, Flood, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform. And we'll see you next time on the podcast. Thanks again to Dave, and bye-bye, everybody.